The unexpected encounter. Captain Ella Brooks leaned back in her seat aboard the Valor, humanity's most advanced space cruiser, her boots resting on the console with a mixture of pride and exhaustion. The sterile, mechanical hum of the ship's engines vibrated through her bones as she gazed out at the stars. They stretched out before her in an endless sea of black, punctuated only by the tiny pinpricks of distant suns. To the casual observer, it would have seemed peaceful, serene even. But Captain Brooks knew better. Space was not peaceful. It was the realm of predators, survival, and the unknown. Every stretch of space was a potential threat, a vacuum where anything could be lurking, waiting to pounce. And humans, despite their technological advances, were far from invulnerable. She let out a slow breath, the weight of her thoughts grounding her, as she swiveled her chair to face her crew. They were all silent, eyes glued to their stations, but there was an undercurrent of tension. The ship had been on a routine exploration mission, charting uninhabited sectors near the edge of known space, when the unthinkable happened. A sudden transmission, unlike anything they'd ever seen, had been intercepted from an unknown alien race. The large, threatening fleet appeared to be approaching Earth's borders, and they weren't here for a diplomatic summit. The message, though short, left no room for misunderstanding. It was clear: surrender or face total annihilation. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't excited for a little action. Commander Ronak, Ella's second-in-command, broke the silence, his voice laced with nervous energy. But this is something else. They don't even know us, yet they're threatening our entire existence. Ella smiled, but there was no humor in it. They don't need to know us. They've never met a species like ours. This might be their first mistake. Ronak raised an eyebrow. You think we can fight them off, Captain? Ella's eyes hardened, her mind sharp and focused. The threat from the alien fleet was clear, but so was humanity's ability to adapt and survive. It was what made humans different from other species in the galaxy. We won't just fight them off, she replied, her voice low and confident. We'll make sure they understand the cost of underestimating us. As she spoke, the holographic display on the console in front of her flickered to life, and an alien figure appeared in the center of the room. Its form was unlike anything Ella had ever seen before. It had multiple appendages, not tentacles, but long, segmented limbs, each one extending with precision, as if it were crafted for efficiency. Its face was completely featureless, its only discernible trait a pair of large black eyes that seemed to study her with calculating precision. It blinked once before speaking, its voice a series of strange, rhythmic clicks that were translated into English by the ship's advanced translator system. I am Ambassador Calthor, emissary of the Tivar Dominion. The voice echoed around the bridge, cool and detached. Your planet has been chosen for subjugation. Surrender immediately, or your species will face the consequences. The words, cold as they were, didn't faze Ella. Her years of military service had taught her how to read the subtle signs of a diplomat trying to hide uncertainty behind a facade of power. There was a tremor in Calthor's voice, an edge of doubt buried under the smooth exterior. Well, Calthor, Ella said, her voice steady, I'd advise you to reconsider your position. You're entering a part of space that humanity knows very well, and we don't take kindly to threats. We don't give up easily. Calthor's eyes flickered as if taken aback, but it quickly regained composure. Your species is primitive. Your technology is no match for ours. Surrender or be annihilated. Ella leaned forward, her fingers brushing over the controls with a quiet confidence. Primitive. Is that what you think? You've miscalculated, Ambassador. I'll give you one piece of advice before you make your fatal mistake. Don't judge us by our technology alone. We've survived worse than your fleet, and we'll survive this too. You've got 1 hour to withdraw, or we'll show you why humanity is not a species you want to provoke. Calthor's image shimmered with apparent disbelief. You dare defy us? We will not hesitate. The Tivar Dominion has conquered hundreds of worlds. Your species will be no different. Ella smiled, her eyes narrowing with determination. "Conquer hundreds of worlds. You might have done that, but I'm not sure you've met a species like humanity before. You've got no idea what we're capable of." As she spoke, the bridge crew watched her with a mixture of awe and trust. They had heard the stories. Humanity's ability to survive against all odds, to overcome adversities that seemed insurmountable, was legendary. But this was different. This was a confrontation with a technologically superior alien species, and the stakes had never been higher. Despite the fear that simmered under the surface, there was one thing humanity knew how to do better than any other species in the galaxy: adapt. Ella stood from her chair and turned to the crew. "Prepare for battle stations. We've got work to do." She glanced over at Ronak, who met her gaze with a nod. He had seen her face this kind of threat before, and he knew exactly how she operated. She would face the challenge head-on, never backing down, never giving in. As the crew moved to their positions, Ella couldn't help but think back to the very first days of humanity's space exploration. When they had taken their first steps into the void, there had been no grand declarations of conquest, no promises of glory. They had been explorers, seekers, trying to understand the universe around them. They had never expected to be thrust into a galactic conflict, but here they were, standing at the brink of a war they didn't start, against an enemy they had yet to fully understand. Yet, Ella had no doubt that humanity would find a way to turn the tide in their favor. They always did. Against impossible odds, humanity had always fought back, always found a way to survive, always managed to turn the impossible into something achievable. And today, this would be no different. Her thoughts were interrupted as a loud alarm blared across the bridge, pulling her attention back to the present. The Tivar fleet was getting closer, and they were not backing down. But neither was she. The calm before the storm. The Valor stood in the vast expanse of space like a sentinel, its sleek form glistening under the light of distant stars. The ship's crew moved with quiet efficiency, each member in their designated place, but beneath the surface, there was a palpable tension. Captain Ella Brooks stood at the front of the command deck, her gaze focused on the holographic display of the Tivar fleet advancing toward Earth. The Tivar fleet was enormous, far larger than anything humanity had ever encountered. It consisted of massive warships, each one the size of a city block, bristling with advanced weaponry and shields that seemed impenetrable. They had already sent out their ultimatum: surrender or face annihilation. And now, they were moving in, slowly, methodically, as if their victory was already assured. Ella's thoughts swirled with questions, but she forced herself to remain calm. Her crew needed her to be a steadying force, to inspire confidence in a situation that was anything but certain. She had seen humanity face insurmountable odds before, but this was different. The Tivar were a technological juggernaut, and their threats were not empty. Still, there was something that gnawed at her, something in the way they spoke, the way they underestimated humanity's resilience. They may have been powerful, but they had no idea who they were dealing with. "Status report," Ella commanded, her voice steady, cutting through the noise of the bridge. "Captain." Commander Ronak replied from his station, his eyes scanning the incoming fleet. "The Tivar fleet has reached the outskirts of the Earth system. They're within range of our defenses, but they haven't engaged yet. They're sending another transmission. It's a final warning." Ella's mind raced. The Tivar might have overwhelming firepower, but humanity had something they didn't. They had ingenuity. They had a spirit that refused to die. And above all, they had unity, something the Tivar could never understand. "I'll take it," she said, her voice firm. The large screen in front of her flickered to life, and the image of the alien ambassador reappeared. Calthor's tentacles rippled with agitation, and his eyes flashed with an emotion Ella couldn't quite place. It was almost as if he was disappointed. "You humans have made a grave mistake, Captain Brooks," Calthor said, his voice dripping with disdain. "We've given you ample time to surrender. You had one rotation of your planet to decide. Now, there is no more room for negotiation. You will face annihilation. Ella folded her arms, her expression impassive. We made our decision, Ambassador. Humanity does not kneel to threats. You've underestimated us, and that's going to cost you. Calthor's eyes narrowed, and for a moment, Ella could see the tiniest flicker of doubt in his expression. He quickly masked it, but it didn't escape her notice. He was worried, and that was something she could use to her advantage. Do not mistake our patience for weakness, human, Calthor warned, his tone colder. You will regret this. Ella's lips twitched into a half smile. Actually, Ambassador, it's you who will regret underestimating us. In fact, you're already doing it. The transmission cut out abruptly, leaving the bridge silent once more. Ronak turned to face her, his brow furrowed. Do you think they'll really carry through on their threats, Captain? Ella stared at the screen, deep in thought. I don't know, Ronak. But one thing's for sure. They're not going to win this without a fight. Humanity doesn't give up. Ever. She could feel the weight of her words sink in, not just for Ronak, but for the entire crew. They had all heard the stories, the tales of humanity's resilience, of their ability to push through when the odds were stacked against them. But this was different. They weren't just facing a hostile alien species, they were facing the unknown. Captain, came the voice of Lieutenant Samara from the navigation console. We've intercepted new data from the Tivar fleet. They've deployed a series of advanced warships equipped with weapons capable of disabling our shields. If they use them on Earth, we might be looking at a planetary-wide disruption. Ella's heart skipped a beat. She had known the Tuvar were advanced, but this was beyond what they had anticipated. The technology the Tuvar wielded was beyond anything humanity had seen. It was one thing to fight with brute force, but it was another entirely to fight against a species that could disrupt a planet's entire infrastructure. We have to act fast, she muttered, thinking aloud. If they disable our shields, Earth will be defenseless. We can't let that happen. Captain, our shields are designed to handle most threats, but these weapons, they're unlike anything we've faced, Samara said, concern creeping into her voice. We'll need a plan, a countermeasure, something unconventional. Ella turned to face her. Unconventional is our specialty. A hush fell over the crew as the weight of her words sank in. They had faced impossible situations before, and they had always found a way to turn the tide. But this was different. This was a fight for humanity's survival. Ronak, assemble the strategy team, she ordered. I want every idea on the table, no matter how outlandish. If the Tuvar think they can scare us into submission, they're about to learn a very important lesson. The crew sprang into action, each member pulling up data, consulting simulations, and brainstorming ideas. Ella paced the bridge, her mind spinning with possibilities. She couldn't afford to make a mistake. Not now. Not when everything they had built was on the line. As the minutes passed, a plan began to take shape. It wasn't perfect, but it was the best they had. They would use their knowledge of the Tivar's overconfidence against them, playing to their strengths while exploiting their weaknesses. You ready for this, Ronak? Ella asked, her voice steady but laced with anticipation. Ronak met her gaze with a grin. I was born ready. Ella gave a slight nod, her determination unshaken. Good. Then let's show them what humanity is capable of. As the plan came together, Ella's thoughts turned to Earth, to the people she was fighting for. She thought of her family, her friends, the millions of lives at stake. This wasn't just a battle for survival. It was a battle for humanity's place in the galaxy. They wouldn't back down. They would never surrender. The final countdown had begun. The Tuvar were closing in, and Earth's fate rested in the hands of Captain Ella Brooks and her crew. The storm was coming, but humanity was ready to face it head-on. The unseen enemy. The Valor drifted silently through the cold void of space, its sleek frame a stark contrast to the looming darkness surrounding it. On the bridge, the atmosphere was thick with anticipation. Captain Ella Brooks stood near the command station, her fingers absent-mindedly tapping on the smooth surface of the console. The crew was hard at work, preparing for the impending confrontation with the Tuvar. But despite the activity, an underlying tension seemed to hang in the air like a heavy fog. Ella's mind was a whirlwind of calculations, strategies, and countermeasures. The Tuvar fleet, though vast and technologically superior, had one glaring weakness. They didn't understand the humans they were up against. They had underestimated humanity's ability to adapt, to think on their feet, and to turn impossible situations into opportunities. And that, Ella believed, was their greatest advantage. "Captain, the Tuvar fleet is within firing range." Ronek's voice broke through her thoughts, his tone steady but tinged with urgency. "Their weapons are charging." Ella's gaze snapped to the holographic display, where the enemy fleet was now only a few light minutes away. Massive warships, each one towering with menacing power, hung in the cold expanse like predators waiting to strike. The sleek, black hulls of their vessels shimmered as they adjusted their formations, preparing to launch their assault. "Weapons ready on our end," Ronek continued. "But we're still not sure if our defenses will hold against their energy disruptors. We'll need to be strategic about this, Captain." Ella took a deep breath. "We'll be fine, Ronek. We'll turn their overconfidence into their downfall." Her voice was calm, but the weight of what lay ahead pressed down on her shoulders. The Tuvar might be technologically superior, but humanity had something they didn't: a will to survive that no weapon could destroy. That determination was what had carried them through countless challenges before, and it would carry them through this one as well. "Captain," Lieutenant Samara called out, her voice crackling through the comms. "We've detected something strange in the Tuvar fleet's formation. There's an anomaly. A cloaked ship, hidden within the formation, moving just outside our sensor range. It's not picking up on our normal scans, but I've isolated a faint energy signature." Ella's heart skipped a beat. Cloaked ship? How is that possible? They didn't show any signs of cloaking technology during our last encounter. Samara's fingers flew over the control panel as she adjusted the ship's sensors. "I don't know, Captain. But whatever it is, it's big. And it's heading straight for Earth." "This is bad," Ronek muttered under his breath, his eyes flicking between the main display and the sensor readings. "If they've got stealth capabilities we didn't know about, it changes everything. We won't see them coming until it's too late." Ella's mind raced. They had expected a direct assault, the kind of brute force attack the Tuvar were known for. But this was different. A hidden ship could slip past their defenses undetected, sabotage their systems, and leave Earth exposed before they even had a chance to retaliate. "We can't afford to let them get close," Ella said, her voice tight with determination. "Samara, run a deep scan of the Tuvar fleet's formation. We need to pinpoint the cloaked ship before it gets any closer." Samara nodded, her eyes scanning the data pouring in. "Understood, Captain. I'm isolating the energy signature and enhancing the scan. If they're using some sort of cloaking tech, we should be able to pick up on a residual energy trail." The tension on the bridge was palpable as Samara worked. Each second felt like an eternity. Ella knew that the clock was ticking. If the Tuvar were planning an ambush, they had to find it now, before it was too late. "There," Samara's voice rang out triumphantly. "I've got it. There's a slight fluctuation in their energy field, just outside their main formation. It's faint, but I'm sending you the coordinates now." Ella's eyes flicked over to the holographic display, where a new marker blinked to life. The cloaked ship was indeed hiding in plain sight, camouflaged within the larger Tuvar fleet, but now they knew exactly where it was. And that made all the difference. "Lock onto that position," Ella ordered. "Prepare to fire a full barrage of plasma disruptors. We can't let that ship get any closer to Earth." The crew moved with precision, each member knowing their role. Ronak worked quickly to line up the Valor's weaponry, while Samara adjusted the targeting systems to ensure they hit their mark. Ella stood at the helm, her mind focused on the task at hand. This was their moment. The moment where humanity's creativity and adaptability would come into play. As the ship's weapons powered up, Ella turned to Ronak. One shot. One chance. We can't waste it. Ronak's hands hovered over the controls. Aye, Captain. The Valor's weapon systems hummed to life, and a series of energy pulses shot out toward the cloaked Tuvar ship. The beams cut through the void, each one a potential death sentence for the hidden vessel. Seconds later, the ship flickered into view, its cloaking technology failing under the force of the plasma barrage. The ship was massive, far larger than any of the Tuvar vessels they had seen so far. But even its size wasn't enough to prevent it from taking the brunt of the attack. Sparks flew from its hull as shields began to flicker, and within moments, the ship's cloaking field collapsed entirely. "I've got a visual on it," Samara said, her voice almost triumphant. "It's a command ship. I think it's their flagship." Ella's heart raced. This was it, the Tuvar's central command, the brain of their fleet, now exposed. Target their engines. Disable them. We can't afford to let them retreat. Another volley of fire rained down upon the Tuvar command ship, this time aimed at its propulsion systems. The ship rocked violently as the plasma disruptors slammed into its engines, sending shockwaves through its hull. The Tuvar flagship shuddered, but it wasn't finished yet. The ship's defensive systems sprang to life, launching a flurry of countermeasures that sent missiles and energy pulses toward the Valor. The Valor's shields flared as they absorbed the incoming fire, but Ella knew they couldn't hold forever. "We're taking hits," Ronak shouted, his voice strained. "Shields are holding, but they're weakening. We need to finish this now, Captain." Ella clenched her fists. There was no more time for hesitation. "All ships, focus fire on the Tuvar flagship. We need to break their fleet apart, piece by piece." The Valor's cannons roared to life again, unleashing a barrage of energy blasts that tore into the Tuvar flagship's hull. The ship began to buckle under the pressure, its once imposing structure cracking and splintering as it fought to hold together. But despite their best efforts, the Tuvar flagship didn't fall easily. It retaliated with devastating force, launching a volley of missiles that sent a shockwave rippling through space. The Valor rocked violently, throwing the crew off balance. "Captain," Samara shouted, her voice full of alarm. "We've lost primary power to the starboard side. The Tuvar flagship is launching another counterattack. It's a massive energy pulse, and it's headed straight for us." Ella's heart raced, but she forced herself to remain calm. Brace for impact. The Valor trembled as the energy pulse slammed into its side, the shields flickering dangerously. The ship groaned as it absorbed the blow, but it held. Ella gritted her teeth and slammed her fist on the console. "We're not going down that easily," she yelled, her voice fierce. "All hands, prepare for a final push. Let's show the Tuvar what humanity is made of." With a final, resounding roar, the Valor unleashed everything it had. The Tuvar flagship crumpled under the barrage, its shields finally failing as the ship was reduced to debris. The remaining Tuvar ships hesitated, unsure of how to respond to this unexpected turn of events. For the first time, Ella allowed herself a small, victorious smile. The battle was far from over, but humanity had sent a message: don't underestimate them. "We've done it," Ronak breathed, disbelief in his voice. Ella nodded. "For now. But this war is far from finished." As the wreckage of the Tuvar flagship drifted in space, a new resolve settled over the crew of the Valor. The Tuvar had picked a fight with the wrong species, and humanity would make sure they learned the hard way just how costly that mistake was. But one thing was clear: they weren't done yet. Not by a long shot. The unyielding tide. The aftermath of the battle left the Valor battered but alive. Captain Ella Brooks stood at the front of the bridge, staring out into the vastness of space. The Tuvar flagship, once an imposing force, was now little more than a smoldering heap of debris floating aimlessly in the cold expanse. The victory felt hard-won, but it was far from over. The remaining Tuvar ships hadn't retreated, and the worst part was the unknown. What other weapons, what other ships were hidden in their fleet? "Captain," Ronek's voice broke the silence, pulling Ella from her thoughts. "We've assessed the damage. The ship's systems are holding, but we've lost some of our forward thrusters. We're moving slower than usual, but we're still in fighting shape. The fleet is still out there, and we need to be prepared for whatever comes next." Ella nodded, the weight of the situation pressing down on her. "I know, Ronek, but this victory wasn't just about destroying their flagship. It's about sending a message, and I think we've done that. They're not going to underestimate us again." Her thoughts were interrupted by a loud chime from the communication console. A message was coming through. Samara, at her station, adjusted the frequency and let the transmission play. "Human Captain," came the voice, distorted and dripping with contempt. "You may have defeated our flagship, but this war is far from over. The Tuvar are not so easily beaten. You have struck a blow to our fleet, but we have no intention of retreating. Prepare yourselves for the consequences." It was the same ambassador, Calthor, the one who had delivered the ultimatum before. This time, though, there was something different in his tone. A mixture of frustration, anger, and disbelief. The Tuvar had never expected to face an enemy like humanity. "We're not backing down either, Ambassador," Ella said, her voice steady. "You've just made a grave mistake by provoking us. You may have superior technology, but you'll never understand what drives us. You think you can intimidate us with your threats and weapons, but we fight for something bigger. We fight for our home. And we won't stop until we've won." The transmission abruptly cut off, but Ella didn't need any confirmation. She knew that this was only the beginning. The Tuvar might have thought they were playing a game of conquest, but they were about to learn that humanity's resolve was not something to be trifled with. "Captain," Ronek called out again, his voice laced with urgency. "There's something strange. We've just detected a small fleet breaking off from the main Tuvar force. They're headed directly for Earth. They're not using their primary weapons, but they're equipped with something else. A strange kind of energy pulse." Ella's heart skipped a beat. "Energy pulse? What are they planning?" "It's hard to say," Samara replied. "It's not like any pulse we've seen before. It could be some kind of specialized weapon, or it could be something designed to disable our entire defense grid. Whatever it is, it's a threat." Ella took a deep breath and thought for a moment. The Tuvar had revealed that they could be unpredictable. If they were resorting to new tactics, then humanity had to be equally creative in their responses. They couldn't afford to wait and see what the Tuvar had in store. "Ronek," she said, her voice sharp, "prepare a counterattack. I want every available ship to form up around Earth. We'll hit them with everything we've got." Ronek nodded without hesitation. "Aye, Captain." Setting course now. The crew scrambled into action, each member falling into their designated roles. Ella turned her attention to the larger picture. Earth wasn't just a home. It was a symbol of everything humanity had fought for, a legacy of survival against all odds. She could not allow it to fall. "Samara, start rerouting energy to our defensive systems," Ella instructed. "We need to be prepared for whatever they throw at us. If they want to play this game, then we'll make sure they learn the rules." "I'm on it," Samara said, her hands dancing over the controls. "I'll also try to reconfigure our pulse shields to counter whatever they're using. It's going to take a few minutes, though." Ella turned to Ronek, her face set with determination. "Make sure we don't lose a second. We don't know how long Earth can hold out." The minutes ticked by, each one feeling like an eternity. Ella stood near the viewport, watching as the Tuvar ships drew closer. They had sent a small fleet, which could be a sign that they were testing humanity's resolve. The decision to fight them head-on, instead of retreating, was a gamble. But Ella trusted her crew. She trusted humanity's ability to adapt. They had never run from a fight before. "Captain, we've got a visual on the Tivar fleet," Samara said, her voice tight with concentration. "They're positioning themselves in a triangular formation. It looks like they're trying to overwhelm our defenses from all sides." Ella's mind raced. The Tivar were trying to use their numbers against them, and it was a strategy that could work if they weren't careful. They needed to turn the tables. They needed to make the Tivar realize they had underestimated humanity's resourcefulness. "Prepare a flanking maneuver," Ella said, her mind already formulating a plan. "We'll divide our forces, hit them from two sides. Samara, I need those pulse shields up now." "I'm almost there, Captain," Samara responded, sweat starting to bead on her forehead. "I'll have the pulse shields recalibrated in just a few seconds." Ella took a deep breath and issued the orders. Her voice was steady, but inside, she could feel the weight of the moment pressing on her shoulders. This wasn't just a battle for Earth. This was a battle for humanity's very survival. And they had to win. The Valor lurched forward, the engines firing as they sped toward the Tivar fleet. As they neared the enemy formation, the tension on the bridge was palpable. The Tivar ships were now in firing range, and their weapons glowed with lethal energy. But Ella wasn't worried about that. She had a different tactic in mind. "Now," Ella barked. In an instant, the Valor split into two, its smaller strike teams fanning out to either side of the enemy fleet. At the same time, the pulse shields flickered to life, a protective barrier surrounding the Valor and its auxiliary ships. The Tivar opened fire, but the shots deflected off the shields, dissipating harmlessly into the void. The Valor and its strike teams moved with agility and precision, cutting through the Tivar fleet's formation. The Tivar ships tried to regroup, but it was too late. The humans had anticipated their movements, and they were already one step ahead. Plasma blasts and disruptor fire rained down on the enemy, forcing them into retreat. But even as the Tivar ships were pushed back, Ella knew that this was only a temporary victory. The Tivar wouldn't give up so easily. They would adapt, just as humanity had. "We've pushed them back, Captain," Ronak reported, his voice tinged with relief. "But they're regrouping. They're bringing in reinforcements from the outer edge of the system." Ella exhaled slowly, her gaze focused on the screen. "This is just the beginning. We've sent them a message, but the fight is far from over." "Captain," Samara said, her voice trembling slightly, "they're sending another message. It's from Calthor again." Ella nodded. "Put it through." The screen flickered, and the face of Ambassador Calthor appeared once again. This time, his expression was more guarded, his tone somber. "You humans are persistent," he said, his voice edged with something that might have been respect. "But make no mistake, this will not end in your favor. The Tivar are relentless, and we will do whatever it takes to see your destruction." Ella met his gaze unwaveringly. "Then you'll learn that we are more than just relentless. We're survivors." Calthor's image vanished, leaving the bridge in silence once more. Ella took a deep breath, her mind already racing ahead. The battle wasn't over. But humanity had just proven one thing. They would never go down without a fight. And that was something the Tivar would have to reckon with. "Prepare for the next phase," she ordered. "We're not finished yet."